saw this article on Reddit where the headline was, Suno AI Music CEO says people don't enjoy making music, and thought, I'm sure he was taken out of context, or that's not what he meant, or maybe it was clickbait, but I thought, fine, I'll take the bait. And so begrudgingly I click, and 3 minutes into listening to it, it's even worse and also better than I could have imagined. And I decide, actually, I can't just listen to this. I need to transcribe what he is saying because it's so ridiculous that no one is going to believe me. So that's what this is. And the juicy quote that they use in the article is, it's not really enjoyable to make music now. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of practice. You need to get really good at an instrument, really good at a piece of production software. I think the majority of people don't enjoy the majority of the time they spend making music. That's not even the most funny one. That's not even the most out of touch one. That's not even the most ridiculous one. If you're unfamiliar, Suno is AI. It's one of those ones where you type in some keywords and it poops out a song and you go, hey, I made this. That's, in a nutshell, what Suno is. I'm just going to go through chronologically and share my favorite quotes with you and just my thoughts about him. So when asked to describe Suno, he says, Suno is a way for everybody to experience all of the joys of music, meaning not just background listening to music, but losing yourself in the process of making music, sharing music, editing music, of being a much more active participant in the music. I like to think we're not making music, we're making musicians. Hilarious, because losing yourself in the process of music is already how it works, and I cannot imagine typing words into a search bar and it pumping out a song and then you listening to it and going, yeah, is it an engrossing process? Maybe I'm wrong. Feels like we are doing the tech thing where you're innovating and inventing something that already exists, except you're just shoving a middleman yourself into it. They go into comparing the gaming industry to the music industry. Quote, the thing about video games is that they are interactive, they're engaging, they're rich experiences, they're fun by yourself, they're more fun with your friends. When I think about what music should be for me, it should be all of those things. In that sense, I want to make music more like a video game. Nobody half plays a video game in the same way people kind of put on music in the background and half pay attention to it. Very funny to me because music is all of those things that you just said, and if they're not that to you, that means that you are not that good yet, and you need to practice some more and, develop your skills, but that's not a bad thing. That's part of the journey, part of the process. So that indicates to me that Mikey is maybe not very good at music, or has probably not even really tried. And then the other thing is that he's conflating two different things. People put on music to listen to it, but when you're making it, that has your full attention, and it is engaging and a rich experience and fun by yourself and fun with other people. Also not true. Some people will pop on Twitch or put on a Let's Play in the background while they're doing other stuff, like cooking or cleaning or whatever. So just an untrue statement. Moving on. If you do that, then people will pay for music the way they pay for video games. The video game industry is so much bigger than the music industry. People have no problem partying with their hard-earned money to experience those things. And to me, it seems like just crazy that music should not be as engaging as Fortnite. Again, I would argue making music is much more engaging than Fortnite. I don't like video games. They're not fun for me. Music, very fun for me. Can do that the whole time. It also sounds like he wants people to pay to make music the way that they pay to buy and play video games. So I don't love that. Next segment, the host reads a quote of him back to him, so saying that we're not cheapening music, we're making it more valuable. And the host kind of pushing back a little bit and saying that if you increase the supply of something, then the cost of it typically goes down, and you are creating infinite supply of something, so therefore are you not decreasing the value of music? And his answer is, I think it reduces the price of the average value of any given piece of content, but I think it greatly increases the value of music to society or to any given person. I think that's what we want. We want a bigger and more vibrant music industry that has way more participants in it, that is way more engagement, and not this more precious thing where very few people have access to actually doing it, to making it, and the range of experiences that the average person has is kind of limited and therefore not valuable. Interesting word choice to call it content. Also, who is we when you say, I think that's what we want? Because that is certainly not what I want. It's not any musician I know, and it sounds like we is just you. Also saying music shouldn't be this precious thing where very few people have access to actually doing it. What are you even talking about? Before the advent of AI, there were thousands of songs uploaded to Spotify every day. So much music that no human person could possibly listen to all of the music that was being uploaded every day, right? Like there's so much music there that musicians famously are having trouble cutting through such a saturated market and getting their music heard by people. There's just so much goddamn music. So what are we even talking about here? Because I have a hard time getting on board with this idea that music is very exclusive and gatekept and that people don't have access to music. So it feels like Mikey is a little bit out of touch with the plight of the modern musician and just the landscape of music in 2025. At about the 15-minute mark, the host asks him what the metrics of success are for Suno and how he would measure success. And he says, "Did you hit the paywall your first day? Even if you didn't go through it for whatever reason, if you hit the paywall, you just enjoyed the last 10 or 12 minutes of your life. And I know I did something good there. If you made one song and threw it away and never came back to it, we didn't wow you. You didn't have that magical experience. We missed our mark." So good. It's so funny to me to think that just because you used it for the 10 minutes, that you had a magical experience and you really enjoyed your time. What is there to say? He's so smug. It's so funny. But I suppose that's just a tech founder, CEO thing. They talk about their biggest costs and him saying GPU burn. It's the number one cost. It's multiple times the payroll, which I only bring that up because it comes up later. And then the host asks him to speak on some of the lawsuits that they are involved in. And he says, quote, "We know that there are some copyrighted works in our training data. That's not illegal. It's stock standard for the industry. It's what every AI company does. In some sense, the lawsuit wasn't totally shocking. Most AI companies get sued. Everybody in music gets sued. It's a highly litigious industry." And I want to take a pause there because there's already so much to unpack. It's so tech. The whole move fast and break things. To me, that communicates, we're doing things so fast, things have changed so fast that the laws haven't caught up yet. So technically, we're not breaking any laws. Technically, we're not doing anything illegal. It will be in the future, just not yet. We're not breaking the law, we're just being unethical. And on top of that, the way that these tech companies are harvesting all this data to train their AI, I think is very revealing about how they think about it. And I think that they know it's not cool. For Meta products, you are automatically opted into allowing Meta to track your phone usage even outside of the Meta apps. So even if you're not using any of their products and you're just browsing on Google or texting a friend, you are automatically opted into giving them all of that data to harvest and to train their AI apps. And you have to go in there manually and disable it. And to disable it, you need to literally look up a step-by-step how-to to disable those features. So if that's what they're doing, I think that communicates that they know that the user will not like that. And that's why they don't ask you, "Hey, can we do this?" They just do it. Also notable that he says everybody in music gets sued. It's a highly litigious industry. And it's kind of slick that he's conflating those two things because in music, people are not getting sued for the same reason AI companies are getting sued. Anyways, going back to him talking about lawsuits, it's a little bit depressing in some way because I think there's a much bigger and brighter future of music to build together with the existing industry instead of kind of fighting it out and having the potential for this thing to be just net smaller. And then he references some paper that's like, more lawyers, less growth, more engineers, more growth. Not that important, don't really care. What he does say next, though, is fun. Instead of fighting it out, if we were talking, which we were before this lawsuit happened at least, to some of the players in that lawsuit, if we were working together toward a bigger future of music, everybody would just be happier. It was everybody. It sounds more like if we were all doing the thing that I want that benefits me the most, we would all be happier. Oh gosh, and then the host, I don't know if this was like a planted question. It's so funny. He goes, "How would you have liked the incumbents to have behaved?" And then Mikey goes, "Talk to us first, probably." It's so good. I didn't ask if I could allegedly steal your shit, but you should have asked before you sued us for allegedly stealing your shit. It feels like a terrible boyfriend does something terrible, and then the girlfriend gets upset, understandably, and then the boyfriend is gaslighting them and "You should have just talked to me before you keyed my car." And then the host asks, "Okay, but what if Suno loses the lawsuit?" And then Mikey says, "I would just be thinking about A, the game theory of what all players want here, and B, what is the best future of music for everyone? Even if you could make Suno or Suno-like companies or AI companies go away, do you really want that?" Yes. What if the music industry can be as big as the gaming industry? There's going to be a lot of happy people. I feel like another slick one here. It feels like he's putting himself on the same level as UMG and Sony Music, even though they are not remotely in the same, right? They're not playing the same game. The invocation of game theory is very funny. Also, what is the best future of music for everyone? I don't know if that everyone includes the people who actually write songs or musicians or the people whose data you're scraping, or the planet as continuously burn tremendous amounts of energy to work your product. I don't know that everyone is going to be thrilled with that. I certainly am not. And also for that last bit, what if the music industry can be as big as the gaming industry? There's going to be a lot of happy people. If I recall correctly, the gaming industry is famous for having a lot of unhappy people, at least for the people who make the games, especially if you're a woman. But again, not a gamer. Don't work in games, don't really know that much about it, so I'm happy to defer to someone who has more knowledge in that. At the 23-minute mark, the host asks a very normal question, but it's just worded funny to me because he asks, when we think about the future of music, then how does that look? Because you have your existing players today, the Spotifys, most namely of the world. How does that look in your ideal world? And it's funny that he uses Spotify and not, UMG or Sony Music or people who just own their own music. It's not the people who own the rights to this intellectual property, who make these things happen. It's the distributor that has sort of inserted itself into the middle. Anyhow, Mikey starts answering in just the most fluffy tech PR speak. It's the kind of series of sentences where the sum is less than its parts. But then we do get one of our very juicy quotes about making music, which is, it's not really enjoyable to make music now. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of practice. You need to get really good at an instrument, really good at a piece of production software. I think the majority of people don't enjoy the majority of the time spending music. Again, really one of my favorite quotes in this whole thing, and just so revealing to how bad he probably is at making music, but also kind of sad. I think it shows that Mikey has maybe not ever had the opportunity to learn how to get good at something, and just the pure human joy you get when you can do something that you couldn't do before, or to get better at something, or to be good at something like a craft or a sport or whatever. That's part of it. That's the game, So yeah, equal parts sad and funny, and also just showing that I think he's also fairly uninterested in this industry that he is trying to disrupt. Here's another good bit. The host asks, when can we train AI on AI? So using pre-existing Suno songs to train Suno to make more songs. And Mikey says, huge open question for how you do this in a way that doesn't impart just massive bias into models. We work on it a little bit. The bigger players are hitting data walls that are more actively working on it. And like everything else, it's really nice to have the big players solve a lot of the really thorny problems for you, and you can kind of focus on your competitive advantage. So I'm hoping that solves the problem, and it's not us. So regarding the massive bias of if you use Suno songs to make more Suno songs, if you can't do that now and it's a problem, what does that say about the music that you're getting out of Suno? And since you can't do that, what do you need? That's right, music made by humans. Oh, bummer. Are you going to pay for that? Probably not. And again, that last bit about having the bigger players solve the problem for you, and it's not going to be us. Showing, again, a lot of, I think, how Mikey thinks, a lot about his personality. I am not willing to solve the problem. I'm going to wait for someone else to do it, and then I'm just going to sort of come in at the end here. That's at least what's being communicated to me. If you're keeping tabs at home, at the 26-minute mark, the host asks, how do you think artists feel about Suno? And he says, quote, I will tell you that. And the host jumps in and says, they love it. And Mikey's like, yeah, well, actually, yes. So it's a biased sample of artists that I speak to, but the vast majority of artists that I speak to behind closed doors admit that they love and use Suno. Calling bullshit on that one. No. I flat out don't think this is true. I think you worded it in a way that it could kind of be true, because it's the artist that I spoke to. But no, I think it's total baloney. And the host doesn't push back on it at all, or ask any follow-up questions. They just move on to what I think is another just planted question, because the host asks, oh, can you create personalized models for different creators? Can you create Ariana Grande songs? What if Ariana Grande comes up to you and says, hey, I want to do a deal with you where I give you exclusive access to my content. Then I'm able to train on my content, and I can leverage my brand effectively and have full control, but an unlimited supply of future Ariana Grande songs in seconds. And then it feels like Mikey just kind of goes into this pitch mode, like he's like trying to get the attention of, major label artists or huge pop acts, because he says, so the answer is yes, I would love to do that. Depending on what her contracts look like, she might not even be allowed to do that, which would be kind of crazy. And the host asks, why? So he says, she doesn't own all of her music, but she owns her name and likeness. I would love to get to a world where she can have models that make Ariana Grande songs. You've noticed in our product, you can blah, 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 blah. That part is so interesting to me, because it feels like he's pitching to Ariana Grande, like, oh, you don't own your catalog, but you own your likeness, and you can make more of your catalog with us, and you could own that catalog. You just got to sign over your rights. And so continuing to talk about, this whole Ariana Grande thing and using Suno, he says, you've noticed in our product that you can't make Ariana Grande songs. If you put her name in, we're going to wave our finger at you and we're going to say, like, that's not what the future of music is. That's not original music. Suno is for original music. Fucking funny. And then the host asks another, like, very, I don't know, it feels like a planted question where he's like, okay, well, what if, an artist did want to opt in? Could they get a cut of that revenue? Mikey says, the thing that people don't realize is that right now we've made something where people enjoy making music so much they are paying to create the music. This has nothing to do with listening. I think that a big part of the future of music is rethinking a lot of these business models. Where right now it's set up as this capped stream share, and the stream share is a certain size and everybody is kind of fighting over it. So just in order, it's funny to say that, okay, now people are willing to pay to create music, as if, people who are, currently making music don't pay to, purchase instruments or plugins, or painters don't pay to buy their art supplies, their canvas, their paint, whatever. But, with Suno, they're finally willing to pay to make music. Quote, make music. Funny to hear him say, oh, and everybody's fighting over, the stream share, because I don't think Daniel Ek is fighting over the stream share with his net worth of like 5 billion or whatever. It also sounds like you're trying to pit the proletariat, the working class, the laboring class against each other, and just hoping that they don't notice that, wait a second, the bourgeoisie, the people who own the means of production, they're not doing anything and they're making way more money. What's going on? And he goes on to say, artists don't make a ton of money from that, and there are hopefully new business models that you can figure out that are much more tied to the enjoyment that people get, that are way more tied to artists, that people want to actually, be interacting with the artists themselves. Perhaps you can print a cool design on a t-shirt with your name on it, or maybe you can play the music live, and people could come see you. Maybe you could go to different states and then play the music, and then they could see you there in their home state. Just some ideas. We have to make an app for it, though. We can't just go and do that willy-nilly. How else am I, as a tech person and as an app, gonna insert myself into this business? Also, who's gonna go out of their way to go see a Suno artist or become like a massive fan of a quote Suno artist? I think it fundamentally misunderstands what people like about musicians or artists or music. And that's something I notice a lot in what he's saying, is that music is a product in and of itself. It is not an experience. Fandom doesn't matter. It's just this thing to be bought and sold, not an experience to have as a human being. So naturally, the host asks him, what are some of those business models? To which he says, imagine you found some creator that you really love, a teenager in Saskatchewan, and you just love this guy's music. You could have a Patreon thing where you could pay him directly, or you could have your own kind of fork of his model if he were cool with that, and if you were cool with that, and you're paying him for that, and now you're making songs that are, your riffs of what he does. In this scenario, is this teenager in Saskatchewan making quote Suno music, just printing out music using keywords and prompts? If that's the case, then why would I have to pay him to make like music similar to him when I could just type the same things? I don't, you know what I mean? And also, people already do that. People who make music, I don't know if you know this, usually they have a favorite artist that really gets them to make music that inspires them, or that they're just happen to be listening to a lot. And the music that they make is gonna sound like that artist. So I feel like we are, again, just innovating something that already exists. And then at the end of this, he says something, again, that just makes me realize that I don't think he likes music that much, like in that way, because he says getting to remix the music of your musical idol is like the ultimate form of engagement with them. It is so much cooler than, like, honestly even meeting them backstage after a concert. The old model of stream share does not properly count for an interaction like that. And I don't know anyone who would prefer to sit at home and type in Noah Khan like beat and then look for something and, just keep doing that instead of being able to meet him after a show and saying, hey, great show. I, love the set. I, like your music. And him saying, oh, thank you. Thanks for blah, blah, blah. Having the human interaction. And I guess they have some kind of partnership with Timbaland. And he says, like, oh, we don't pay him in cash. And it sounds weird because everything this guy says just sounds weird, but they talk about, leveraging the Timbaland name to try to entice more artists to come in and use Suno and to be vocal about using Suno. It all sounds just kind of gross, which, of course it does. And after that discussion, the host, I think, very naturally asks him, well, who else would you like to work with? And then Mikey just kind of goes off the rails and he goes, oh, a lot of pop music has gotten boring. And the host asks, why? Why has it gotten boring? And then he says, oh boy, we could talk about this for hours. Songs have gotten shorter, yes, but also much more homogeneous in melodies, harmonies, song structures, and music innovates very much sonically. Like, there are really interesting sounds, and they all fit into the same song structure, and this is a product of the technology that people use to make music. Digital production, this is a product of streaming. This is a product of platforms like TikTok. And it's funny to hear him kind of, maybe not lambast, but just, I don't know, talk smack about pop music when he maybe 15 minutes ago was like, please, pop music, use us, use Suno. And now he's like, oh, pop music's so boring. And it's like, if you're using Suno, this has been trained on pre-existing pop music, and it just inherently cannot create new music, new sounds, new ideas. It can only recycle and regurgitate and vomit up old things. So I don't see how you're going to get something new out of that. It's just like the whole combination of things, like rhetorically, I guess, is very, very funny to me. And the way he talks about pop music, in my opinion, is very like juvenile. Like, feels very like high school, like college edgy, like, pop music's so boring. Human beings like structure, particularly in songs. We like a verse, then a chorus. And there's a reason why songs that have, 7 different sections that are 14 minutes long aren't very popular. Perhaps they could be someday, but when you have structure and you have certain expectations, it allows you to play with those expectations, to like not do the thing or do something earlier or do something differently than you would have expected because there's an expectation, because there's a precedent for it. And you would know that if you, made music. And then at the end, he says something that is, I don't know, I feel like very common knowledge at this point, that music follows the medium. So if a record can only hold a 3-minute song, then songs are going to be 3 minutes. If an album can only hold 80 minutes of music, then guess what? An album's going to be 80 minutes. It's a very, common idea. He doesn't really expand on it like that because I don't think he really knows that stuff. I feel like I did him a favor by sort of explaining a little bit more. Anyhow, then they talk about Spotify integrating video and how now, Spotify's trying to take on YouTube and Spotify's trying to take on TikTok with Discovery and all this stuff, which feels weird to say because it's January 19th and TikTok just got banned, probably very conveniently for Spotify. But Mikey says, I hope people find it more engaging. Let me answer the video question more tangentially like this. The vast majority of Gen AI video companies have asked us for an API so that we can have, Suno music behind their AI videos. And the answer is always no. Host asks why. The reason is we are trying to make music more valuable for people, and being the background for your video is not making music more valuable. Like, this isn't a cost thing. You can get Epidemic Sounds music for very, very cheap, and that can be the background for your video. And it's funny because, we're gonna take other people's stuff without asking, but we're not gonna share anything. We're not gonna actually give. None of that. And this word valuable keeps coming up over and over. And I don't know what he means by value. Like, in this world of his, I'm wondering if he wants people to just sit down and only listen to music, or like, in like a 90s movie where you're sitting on your bed with your CD player and your headphones on and you're listening to Elliott Smith or something. That, to my understanding, isn't really how people listen to music now, and I don't think people actually care about music that much. And I say that as a person who loves music deeply, but the vast majority of people don't really invest in hardware for their music, like getting nice speakers or nice headphones. They don't like treat their rooms because that, blurs the image of your music. Also, streaming services don't carry like the highest quality and the highest fidelity of music, and I don't think anyone really cares. And the way he says it, to me, almost feels like he thinks that being the background AI music to this AI video is somehow degrading or demeaning, and that, him and his product are above that. I might be projecting, or like might be, sort of just imagining things, but it kind of feels like that, like an ego thing. Then the host asks him about good UI, like what is good UI? And Mikey says, what did you enable that is completely not doable in the old pattern? In thinking like that, this would be, what could I not do in a digital audio workstation? It wouldn't be really easy for me to like take a whole song and cover it in a different genre. But if I like to think about, oh, that is actually something someone might want to do, let me think about that as a first-class citizen workflow and let me build that. He gets kind of cut off and they talk about something else, but not true. Just not true. If you know how to use a DAW, a digital audio workstation, it's very easy to do that. If you have the musical skills, there's nothing for me to say other than I don't think you know how to do this. And just because you don't know how to do it doesn't mean that you can't do it in a DAW. In fact, I find that anything you can think of, you can do in modern music production. I feel like I keep saying it, but it just really screams, I don't know how to do this. Then they move on to talking about prompts and prompt guides in these, AI generative things. So the host asks, how do you think about prompt guides? The screen of death, the box of death. And Mikey says, I hate to be this guy, but I'm going to reject the premise. I hope that in 6 months from now or 12 months from now, we're not using the word prompt. There are just far more intuitive ways to interact with the music, and we shouldn't be guiding you. We should be listening to you. Does not elaborate at all on what that means, like what to use and what word to use instead of a prompt. Doesn't say anything. Cannot emphasize enough, for people who make music, making music is very intuitive. And another thing regarding the we should be listening to you, like, of course he doesn't elaborate on what that means and what that looks like. And I suspect that he doesn't have an answer because he's not willing to find a solution to any problems. He's going to wait for the big players to figure that one out. This interview is just the gift that keeps giving. Then they talk a bit about Suno being a social network platform or social media. They compare it to SoundCloud and sort of how it works with likes and follows, and there's a sort of status if you have a lot of followers, and the things that come along with being a social media. So Mikey says, well, there's a bit of that. I think where SoundCloud goes wrong, there's two things. One is it's still hard to make music. You're kind of limited there, and it's still kind of, there's the creators and there's the consumers, and they don't really mix. And so that's a bit unfortunate, boss, because that's funny. Do people who make music not listen to music? Do people who listen to music not at some point decide that they want to make music? Also, not everyone wants to make music. So just, I don't know, it feels like a wrong statement. Every section is so funny and so revealing. The host then brings up just, the world feeling unstable, uneasy, political unease, the future of labor, let's say the future of information, excuse me, and that, humans have been making music since before we measured time, and now we have Suno who can, or what can make music so easily and so quickly, and what if I felt uneasy about that? What would you say to me? And he says, I think some of this applies outside of music, but I think to whatever extent there are two sides of this thing, there's like the old industry, and then, there are the disruptors, and there's one thing that both sides agree on, and everyone on both sides will say, well, we know it's coming, we know it's inevitable, meaning AI, and I think people in the existing industry will say, like, we know it's coming, and they say this, I think they don't want to sound like decels. They don't want to sound like hermits. Pausing there, because I feel like there's a lot of sleight of hand happening. I don't know if it's intentional or not. It almost sounds very like Trumpy in how he says this, where he frames it as like, oh, there's two sides to this thing. I don't think that's true. I think there are a lot of approaches to this, but now he's sort of created this framework that the conversation exists in, that there's two sides, the old industry and the disruptors, and presenting this thing that is not true as true, that, oh, we all agree that AI is coming and it's inevitable. And just as a person who's not especially excited about it, like I'm receptive to the idea of AI, like, I don't know, maybe it's the future, maybe it's not. I'm very skeptical because just the track record of tech is promising a supercar and delivering a lemon is just time and time again what tech has been in, the experience of me being a human being on this planet for more than 30 years. Moving on, he says, people in the AI community will say it because it's like a security blanket. It's like, oh, don't worry, I'm not coming in to disrupt you, but we know it's coming anyway, And I think in both cases, this is a really bad thing to say because in both cases, on both sides, this is just basically putting your hands up and being like, it's coming and I don't even have to do anything about it. And the future is ours to build. We can build a good future with music with AI, and we can build a bad future of music with AI. Or we can sit back and let someone else do it, and I'm quite energized by this fact, and then he gets kind of cut off. But this part is extra notable because maybe I'm skipping ahead here, but later he says that AI is not inevitable, and it's not a sure thing, and we have to build it to make it happen. So it's just like fully contradictory it's like 10 minutes later when he says this. The host asks him, how can you as a public company CEO, say of UMG, how can you say we know it's coming and not address the core of creation? And he says what that person would do in that case is say, yes, AI is an important part of the creation stack right now, and not try to address the well, what about all of the other people who want to create with these new tools also? Already so great. Because the host asked him, what would you say? And he just immediately distances himself and says, well, what that person would say. And also, what about is already, it's yellow flag immediately. Anybody who says what about to a question, I'm alarmed. But he says, it applies just as much to me as it does to the CEO of Universal Music Group of we can actively build a bigger, better future of music with AI, or we can just wait and someone else in another country, not bound by US laws, not with the same intentions, will build a worse future of music with AI. And I can think of lots of dystopian futures, host. What is a worse future of music with AI? And then we get to the part where it feels like borderline racist, at least xenophobic, when he says two particularly bad ones. One would be like a group in another country that doesn't want to follow the laws will make it so that you can, without permission, impersonate your favorite artist and just make endless copies, and endless Ariana Grande songs, like you said, without giving a cent to Ariana Grande. That would not be great. Oh, a group in another country that doesn't want to follow the laws, they'll just do X, Y, and Z. Those foreigners, those savages in those other, uncivilized countries, they are going to do whatever they want. But we, us, law-abiding U.S. citizens, have our hands tied and we have to follow the rules. And it's so ridiculous. It already seems like AI companies don't give a shit about ethics or laws. And they just do whatever they want. And to the point of they could make endless Ariana Grande songs and not give a cent to Ariana Grande. I don't think that they paid for their data set, and they're just making all this stuff without paying anyone or crediting anyone. Not that I know of, at least. And so are they not doing the same thing that they're saying, oh, the scary foreign people are going to do, He says, there's another bad future, I think, though, which is music is meant to be social, but there's a local optimum, I think, where music just gets less social and gets way too hyper-personalized. Put a pin in that. And so I would hate for the future of music to be you open your phone, you open your app, you hit play, and it knows everything about you, knows what you did this morning, it knows who you texted yesterday, and it knows your mood. It has your Apple Watch, it has your heart rate, and it just streams you endless music that only you're gonna like, that is just like hitting a nerve in your brain. It's like a drug. This is extremely antisocial, and somebody might do that also. So in this world, or maybe he's kind of telling us how he consumes music, that all music consumption is algorithmic, right? Nobody in his world or in the future, or maybe even now, right? Maybe I'm the only person who actively chooses and decides what music to listen to based on my mood, what I want to hear, something I saw, and that actually everybody there's a one big play button and you just go, music, no think, only listen, only consumption. And the other thing that's funny is, again, this is in reference to the scary foreigners making some sort of nefarious AI music thing. He said that GPU burn is their number one cost, and it's multiple times their payroll. And so is a foreign entity to be able to make that volume where there's like personalized song for every single moment. So every song, I'm assuming, is a new song, right? That has been generated for all of the people that are listening to music. That's that's so much. Okay, do you see what I'm getting at? Huh? Okay, and then the host says, "Well, I generated an AI song for my girlfriend. Is that good? Is that a bad thing?" And Mikey says, "Oh, that's fantastic. You made it for somebody. Like, that is so much more social than what exists now, where you listen to music from artists you love, the music, and you see a piece of yourself in the artist. You don't actually interact with them. You making a song for your girlfriend is amazing. You might say, well, I really wish you had spent 10,000 hours playing guitar and then you could have done that without the help of Suno. But short of that, like, is it bad that you did that? No. I think it's actually great that you did that. I don't want it to be only that. Music is social, but there's something about art that's all about the artist. And I think a lot of artists won't even care what other people think of the music. It's just a world where that type of stream is just so pleasurable that you forget about everything else. I think is not as big or good or valuable as it could be." So the host, printing a song on Suno for his girlfriend is more social than how music exists now. Getting together with people and playing music, not social. Making music, maybe sending it to someone in a different country, and then they send it to a different person, and it comes back to you, and you're all working on this thing together. Not social. Having an experience with someone that you're all together listening to music, having the experience sort of through time of maybe you listen to like an Aretha Franklin song, and it was captured in the moment, and you are sort of having this experience that transcends time with music. Not social. Printing a song on Suno for your girlfriend, more social. Also want to note, in the next section, they just start referencing just a bunch of old or middle-aged white guys, so I'm going to just throw one in here too. Bob Dylan said you just need three chords and the truth, so I don't think you need 10,000 hours of playing guitar to write a song. Also, just because you played guitar for 10,000 hours does not make you a songwriter. Turns out you actually need to practice writing songs. It's the way he phrases these things and says these things that, to me, again, indicates that he does not play music, probably doesn't really care that much. And it's funny to hear him talk about artists and how, artists sometimes don't even care what other people think and it's just for them. And, that's hyper-personalized, so can't have that. And then valuable comes up again. Like, is Suno going to be like that enjoyable, like as enjoyable as getting into the flow state of your craft? Printing a song on Suno is somehow as valuable or more valuable. I don't understand. Then the host, for some reason, kind of sheepishly quotes Ben Affleck saying, art is knowing what to do and craft is knowing when to stop. How do you think about that? And Mikey says, Hemingway said, write drunk, edit sober. I think where all this stuff goes is that, and this is a very natural progression that's already happening, where does this all go? It's increasingly taste is the only thing that matters in art. Pretty sure that's an Ira Glass thing. Maybe it's a Seth Godin thing. Either way, middle-aged white guy. Taste is the only thing that matters in art, and skill is going to matter a lot less because you're going to be able to make a lot of stuff, and the people who are going to be recognized are people who are able to pick the vast quantity of stuff, and in this case, and in the case of music, use their ears, say, that was good and that was bad. This is an accelerating trend that already exists. This goes back to the beginning, right? Like, how do you define what is good, what is bad? I think it also just shows a sort of lack of interest in like cultivating taste, because I think that actually is a big part of it. It's like what you choose to expose yourself to, and also like as you develop your craft, your tastes change. Just like your experience of having done the thing changes your taste. And that's the game. That is music. That is art. What you make is your taste. That is exactly what it is. Again, just more and more, this guy does not give a shit about music or art. And is not interested. Anyways, he says, think about it, like 30 years ago, you wanted to be a rock star, you wanted to be an amazing guitarist who could shred, and 15 years ago, you wanted to be a DJ where you would have to learn these pieces of software, and maybe it wasn't quite as virtuosic as it was if you had to spend, 100,000 hours playing your instrument. And so this like 100,000 hours, 10,000 hours thing, right? That's the Malcolm Gladwell, another middle-aged white guy. And this idea about like, being a rock star and shredding 30 years ago, I think is like a Ben Gibbard thing. Maybe it was someone else. But I do distinctly remember him talking about growing up in Seattle and watching all these hair metal bands and feeling like, oh, he couldn't play guitar in a band because those guys were shredding like that and he can't play guitar like that, so he can't be in a band. And then finding the grunge movement and kind of being more influenced and inspired by that. And the final question is, the host asks him, is there any question that I should have asked that I didn't ask? And he says, what should the future of music be? And he says, should is the real word here because we need to build it. It's the question I think about night and day more than any other question. The good outcomes here look like a lot more people doing a lot more music for a lot more hours of the day. And all of the economics will flow downstream from that. And I think about AI as a tool for achieving many of those ends. It lets a lot more people participate in creation. It lets us recommend music to people more. It will let you tailor a song for your girlfriend to her taste, which is like very, very powerful because it turns out she needs to like the song for that effect to happen. It's one where a lot more people, I think, can make a living doing music, and right now, not enough people can actually make a living doing music. And I think about Instagram, or I think about photography pre and post Instagram. Very few people made a living doing photography, and now a lot more people can make a living doing photography because of Instagram. And yes, it changes the tenor of photography. Yes, it changes that every individual image is less valuable than it used to be, but in aggregate, this is a much better future. This is what I would like to do for music. Thank you, Mikey, for just leaving us with such a hilarious paragraph. The good outcomes here look a lot like more people doing a lot more music for a lot more hours of the day. How many hours a day do you think people want to spend sitting at their computer typing, male guitar with vocals, British accent, versus just playing music, just doing the thing? Are people going to do that for more hours than they do make music? And the whole all of the economics are going to flow downstream from that. Would you say it trickles down? And I got such a kick out of it will let you tailor a song for your girlfriend to her taste, which is very, very powerful because turns out she needs to like the song for that effect to happen, is very funny because I think this misunderstands human beings, which is not surprising. But I would think that your girlfriend would like it because you spent all that time thinking about her for doing things like laboring, spending time making this thing for her specifically. And I think she likes it because you made it with your love and care, and not because you typed in her name into a chatbot and, Suno printed out a song and you can go, here, I made this for you. Another good one, just glosses right over, doesn't elaborate, is that somehow this is going to make more people have a living with music, right? He keeps saying somehow this is going to increase the value of music and make it more important, but sounds like you're trying to get engineers out of a job, get songwriters out of a job, producers out of a job, musicians out of a job, people who do jingles, mixing people, just getting rid of all of them and flooding the market with Suno, and who knows how many fractions of a penny you're going to get for your one stream that you generated listening to your song. It's just who's going to pay for all of that? Where's the money going to come from? And it sounds like either way, it all just gets funneled back up to Suno. It sounds like that's the plan. That's everybody making more money doing music. Penultimate thing, second to last thing. When he talks about photography, I'm not a photographer, so I'm not going to speak to how people make a living off of photography and what it was like pre and post Instagram. I will say he's not comparing things that are equal. Suno and Instagram are two very different things, right? Instagram is the distribution. It's like you make your art and you show it, and hopefully you get hired. I don't know. Is that how photography works? Suno, you are printing out songs and just throwing them into the ether. I think a more accurate thing is comparing Suno to something like Midjourney and visual art, and I don't know how that one's going. And the last thing is when he says, but in aggregate, this is a much, much better future, and I would just like to ask, better for whom? I think Mikey is very uninterested in music, has not practiced, is not willing to practice or learn or do hard things or figure out problems or growing or, learning new skills, not interested in the actual business of music, kind of has a self-righteous I know better thing going on, and also potentially never worked outside of tech. The interviewer, very soft, never asks follow-up questions, or maybe they cut them out, and never pushes back on anything, which I think would be annoying, but in this case, I really enjoyed it, because he just got to blah, and just reveals so much about himself. It doesn't seem like he is actually thinking about any real logistics of where money is gonna be generated, how it's gonna work, because he doesn't have any idea of how the music business works. Nor is he willing to think of an alternative, because that would be finding a solution, and we gotta wait for the big players to do that. Also gets a little racist, little xenophobic in the middle, and just out of nowhere, just oh, all right, this is happening now. And finally, full of contradictions. So in conclusion, Suno is lame. If you use Suno other than just the novelty of it, if you're like very serious about it, I think that's pretty lame. Yeah.